So, my dear friends, because I have rung the bell, we are now officially convened. And I want to welcome all these beautiful rectangles of love. And today is a very special day, and it's a very special month. We are celebrating World Interfaith Harmony Week, which has now been extended to the month. This was actually an initiative of King Abdullah, who spoke at the United Nations saying, let's celebrate interfaith, and maybe in the first week of February. And the very next month, the United Nations made a resolution making the week of February and now the month of February a time of where we not only acknowledge diversity, but we honor diversity, but most of all, we celebrate diversity. So this is a program celebrating, besides acknowledging and honoring diversity in every aspect of our lives. So with that, I again wish you a very, very happy welcome. And I'm so delighted that our wonderful musicians, Monica and Jeffrey, are here. And so let's sit back and enjoy beautiful music from them. Thank you.
Thank you, Jamal. Actually, we're going to ask you to participate. I hope you enjoy it also, though. Our first musical selection is the World Peace Prayer. And the refrain is from the, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing it right, but it's Upanishads, the Hindu sacred texts. And it was translated by Satish Kumar with additional verses by Marty Haugen.
So look in the chat.
So look in the chat there. I'm going to sing the refrain for you, and then we'll sing the refrain again, and hopefully you can join along with us.
Of course, if you sing unmuted, it doesn't really work out. So unfortunately, we won't hear the sound of all our voices together.
Oh, I just want to say one thing. I did a little research on this, and it says the central lessons of the Upanishad centers on the notion that all of the many and various beings in a constantly changing world are infused with and inwardly supported by a single, subtle, pervasive, powerful, and abiding divine presence that stands as the ultimate and true reality. Because it is the ground of all being, the essence of the Absolute abides hidden, as it were, within all beings. A related and key lesson, therefore, is that the subtle essence of the human being is identical to the essence of the single and eternal world soul. So we are all united. Thank you.
The composer of the song is Marty Haugen, by the way.
I think some of you know it. I think I've heard this at the Interfaith Sanctuary before. Lead us from death to life, from falsehood to truth, from despair to hope, from fear to trust. Lead us from hate to love, from war to peace. Let peace fill our hearts. Let peace fill our world. Let peace fill our universe. Can you sing that with us? Try it again. Here we go. Lead us from death to life. Lead us from death to life, from falsehood to truth, from despair to hope, from fear to trust. Lead us from hate to love, from war to peace. Let peace fill our hearts. Let peace fill our world. Let peace fill our universe. Still all the angry cries, still all the angry guns, still now your people die, our sons and daughters. Let justice rule, let mercy pour down. Come and teach us the way of compassion. Lead us from death to life, from falsehood to truth, from despair to hope, from fear to trust. Lead us from hate to love. peace fill our hearts. Let peace fill our world. Let peace fill our universe. So
many lonely hearts, so many broken lives, longing for love to break into their darkness. Come teach us love, come teach us peace, come and teach us your way of compassion.
lead us from death to life, from falsehood to truth, from despair to hope, from fear to trust. Lead us from hate to love, from war to peace. Let peace fill our hearts. Let peace fill our world. Let peace fill our universe. Let justice evermore, let mercy fill the earth. Let us begin to grow into your people. We can be love, we can bring peace, we can still be your way of compassion. Lead us from death to life, from falsehood to truth, from despair to hope, from fear to trust. Lead us from hate to love, from war to peace. Let peace fill our hearts. Let peace fill our world. Let peace fill our universe.
Thank you so much. A few moments of silence as these words, like Rumi says, splash in our heart. Let it now perfume our hearts in silence. Thank you so much, my dear friends. And now I call on Reverend Karen Lindquist.
So, good morning, everyone. We have a couple of rituals that we offer at the beginning of our sacred services. And one of those is to call in our ancestors. So, take a moment to remember the lineage that you come from, those who made it possible for you to be here today, for those who strove, cared for, applied effort, most of all, expressed their love into life and into the future, which became your opportunity to live a beautiful life here on earth. We also honor our teachers. We also honor all the prophets, saints, and angels that exist in the world, in the universe, who guide and assist us. So we'll take a moment and recognize our ancestors. Another ritual we have is we honor our first peoples. And since time immemorial, American Indians, Alaskan Natives, and Native Hawaiians have built vibrant and diverse cultures, safeguarding land, language, spirit, knowledge, and tradition across the generations. And yet our country was conceived on a promise of equality and opportunity for all people. A promise, despite the extraordinary progress we have made through the years, we have never fully lived up to this promise. It's especially true when it comes to upholding the rights and dignity of Indigenous people who were here long before colonization of America began. For generations, federal policy systematically sought to assimilate and displace Native people and eradicate Native cultures. Today, we recognize Indigenous peoples' resilience and strength, as well as the immeasurable positive impact they have made on every aspect of American society, We also commit to supporting a new, brighter future of promise and equity for tribal nations, a future grounded in tribal sovereignty and respect for the human rights of indigenous people of the Americas and around the world. And in our location here today, we honor the Coast Salish people, specifically the Duwamish tribe, on whose land we are housed, live, and work. And we say, Haichka, Haichka. Thank you.
Again, a few moments of silence. And thank you so much, Reverend Karen, who is a senior minister and co-founder of Interfaith Community Sanctuary. You know, when we came to Interfaith Community Sanctuary, my hair was black, but her hair has stayed the same color. So I don't know what her secret is, but bless you, Karen. Okay, my dear friends, now some wonderful songs and music from our talented and life-giving musicians.
I couldn't unmute. Okay. All right. So I'm going to play an instrumental arrangement of a song from Lebanon by Fairuz, and the song is called Alamuni, which I understand means they taught me.
Thank you so much for that beautiful music. You know, I love to quote Rumi, who says, music is the sound of the spheres. And we have been a part of this harmony before. And this earthly singing and music keeps our remembering fresh. So just a few moments of silence. Thank you, my dear friends. And now our distinguished presenters. The first presenter is a couple, John and Silvana Hale. You know, you can find their bio in the website. What is it I would like to say about John and Hale? I first met John, I keep talking about my hair, when my hair was really black, well over 20 years ago. I remember standing on the stairway in a big hotel in Bellevue where there was an interfaith program, and Brother John was telling me, you know, I and Silvana, they're Catholics. We want to really get engaged in interfaith. And I can tell you, well, now that well over 2 decades have passed, way more than that, this couple has been the most actively engaged interfaith couple in this part of our, shall I say, Northwest, certainly for Seattle, very actively involved in the world of interfaith. You know, they believe, like we always say, that interfaith is not just a matter of hospitality, it is a matter of our survival. That's one. And the second thing which they also believe, and they advocate, that is interfaith is not about conversion, it is about completion, becoming a more complete, developed human being. They embody that. So please welcome John and Silvana Hale. Welcome.
Thank you, Brother Jamal. I remember that opportunity when you invited me to that meeting in Bellevue very, very vividly. There were hundreds of people in that ballroom when I opened the door, and I wondered how I would ever find you. But I followed the halo and we met.
You mean you followed the white in my hair? I get it.
It wasn't white that time. So we're offering a Christian canticle by St. Francis of Assisi. St. Francis was a Christian mystic who lived from 1182 to 1226. He saw God in all things, and he called them Brother Sun, Sister Moon, Brother Wind, Sister Water, Brother Fire, Mother Earth, and all the creatures. Born in a wealthy family, he founded the Order of Franciscan Friars and experienced God humbly as within all things, but not enclosed, outside all things, but not excluded, above all things, but not aloof, below all things, but not debased. His writings were the first documents of early Italian language. Silvana and I will recite for you this famous Canticle of the Creatures, alternating between English and early Italian. Most high, all powerful, all God, all good Lord, all praise is yours, all glory, all honor, and all blessings. To you alone, Most High, do they belong, and no mortal lips are worthy to pronounce your name.
Altissimo, onnipotente, buon Signore, tu è solo il laude, la gloria e l'onore, et omne benedizione. A te, altissimo, se confano, e nullo homo è ne digno tementovare.
Praised be you, my Lord, with all your creatures, especially Sir Brother Sun, who is the day through whom you give us life. And he is beautiful and radiant with great splendor. Of you, Most High, he bears the likeness. Praise be you, my Lord, through Sister Moon and the stars. In the heavens you have made them bright, precious and fair.
Laudato sii, mi Signore, con tutte le tue creature, specialmente me solo frate sole, lo quale è giorno, e t'allumini noi per lui. E te lo è bello e radiante con grande splendore, de te altissimo porta significazione. Laudato sii, mi Signore, per sola luna e le stelle, in cielo l'hai create, preziose e clarite e belle.
Praised be you, my Lord, through brothers wind and air, and fair and stormy all weather's moods, by which you cherish all that you have made.
Laudato sii, mi Signore, per frate vento, e per aere et nubilo et sereno et omne tempo, per lo quale alle tue creature dai sostentamento.
Praised be you, my Lord, through sister water, so useful, humble, precious, and pure. Praised be you, my Lord, through brother fire, through whom you light the night, and he is beautiful and playful and robust and strong.
Laudato sii, mi Signore, per sola acqua, la quale è molto utile et umile et preziosa et casta. Laudato sii, mi Signore, per frate fuoco, per lo quale annallumini la notte, e tello è bello et iocondo e robustoso e forte.
Praise be you, my Lord, through our sister, Mother Earth, who sustains and governs us, producing varied fruits with colored flowers and herbs.
Laudato sii, mi Signore, per sola nostra madre terra, la quale ne sostenta e governa, e produce diversi frutti con coloriti fiori ed erba.
Praised be you, my Lord, through whose you grant pardon for love of you, and bear sickness and trial. Blessed are those who endure in peace by you most high. They will be crowned.
Laudato sii, mi Signore, per quelli che perdonano per lo tuo amore, et sostengo infirmitate e tribolazione. Beati quelli che sosterranno in pace, che da te altissimo saranno incoronati.
Praise be you, my Lord, through sister death, from whom no one living can escape. Blessed are they she finds doing your will. No second death can do them harm.
Laudato sii, mi Signore, per sola nostra morte corporale, dalla quale nullo uomo vivente può scappare. Beati quelli che troverà nelle tue santissime volontati, che la morte seconda non farà male.
Praise and bless my Lord, and give him thanks, and serve him with great humility.
Laudate e benedicetemi, Signore, et ringraziate et serviteli con grande umilitate.
Grazie, San Francesco. Our next offering is a sacred dance that represents the prayer of St. Francis. Make me a channel of your peace. You may be familiar with it. Attributed to St. Francis, the prayer asks us to bring hope where there is despair, light where there is darkness, love where there is hatred, and where there is sadness, ever joy. It expresses the insight that peace begins within each of us, starting in our own hearts. It also asks us to understand that it is in pardoning that we are pardoned, that in giving to all that we receive. The prayer was recited by Pope John Paul II in 1986 at the first World's Day of Prayer for Peace in Assisi, Italy, and has received recognition by people of all faiths. Our friend Betsy Beckman will now lead us in the sacred dance.
Lord, make me a channel of your peace. Grant that I can see through my human pain and still feel loved. In the darkness, let a light be found in there. Lord, make me a channel of your peace. We all need to learn to forgive a few more hundred times. Melt our hatred, let love take root in our hearts. Lord, make me a channel of your peace. Through my own pain and need, let me learn to understand. Reach through our sadness, let it be joy. Lord, make me a channel of your peace.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Brother John, Sister Silvana, for that beautiful offering. Let's just be quiet for a few seconds. And I will do very briefly a non-Abrahamic chant before we bring the next presenter from the Hindu tradition. Om Shanti Om. I am a peaceful soul. Om Shanti Om. I am a peaceful soul. Just join me for a few times. Om Shanti Om. I am a peaceful soul. Om Shanti Om. I am a peaceful soul. And now, my dear friends, I want to present Rabbi Anson Laytner, who, if you look at the bio data in the website, is a very distinguished rabbi with many honors, many titles, my God, abundance of work he has done. He looks very young and he's a very young man, but he has extended himself to a multitude of Really, the most beautiful projects. But what can I say about Rabbi Anson Laytner? From my heart, you know, there's a verse in the Quran that says, Allah is the Lord of grace abounding. From that, the Islamic sages have come up with this insight that the character of a wali means friend of God. The character of a wali is based on nothing more than graciousness and generosity. The character of a friend of God is based on nothing more than graciousness and generosity. I would say Brother Anson Laytner, Rabbi Anson Laytner, really embodies that. You know, I'm a Muslim. I'm very pro-Palestinian, and I and Brother Anson, Rabbi Anson, have had differences about Israel, Palestine. But I know very few people who handles this conversation with such graciousness and generosity. Let's welcome this wonderful wali, friend of God, Rabbi Anson Laytner.
Thank you, Jamal. It's a pleasure to be here. I'd like to give a short talk on the fundamental principles in the Jewish tradition, according to a number of rabbis. So to begin with, two ancient rabbis disagreed on the fundamental principle in the whole Torah. Quoting Leviticus, Rabbi Akiva said, it should be love your neighbor as yourself. That's the greatest principle in the Torah. But Rabbi Ben Azai said, quoting early part of Genesis, this is the record of the descendants of Adam. Now, Rabbi Akiva's principle is pretty obvious. It's one that I think almost every faith would hold to. But what is the meaning of Ben Azai's teaching? When Ben Azai says, this is the record of the descendants of Adam, he's teaching that all human beings are descendants of the one father and mother, and therefore we're all siblings. So no one can claim to be greater than any other person, and we should not therefore hate one another. When we say love your neighbor as yourself, technically you're only involving those who are nearby, but saying we are descendants of common ancestors who in turn were created in the divine image means that we ought to feel siblinghood for all people. Therefore, the basic siblinghood of humanity is the most basic inclusive principle in the Torah, and all our actions should be guided by this unifying principle. Two rabbis, two opinions, but I'm also a rabbi, and here's my choice for the greatest principle in the Torah. In Genesis 18, God decides to punish Sodom and Gomorrah for their evil and sins. But first, God lets Abraham know in advance. This is how the Torah depicts the scene. Then Adonai, or the Lord, said, shall I hide from Abraham what I'm about to do? Abraham will surely become a great and powerful nation, and all the nations on earth shall be blessed through him. For I have chosen him, so that he will direct his children and his household after him to keep the way of Adonai by doing what is just and right, so that Adonai will bring about for Abraham what he has promised him. By doing what is just and right, those are the key words. What the Torah allows us to hear, as it were, is God's internal dialogue. What God is asking rhetorically teaches us a fundamental lesson in how to act. God wants Abraham to direct his descendants to keep the way of Adonai by doing what is just and right. And that is why God reveals to Abraham what God is about to do to Sodom and Gomorrah. In a way, it's a test of Abraham's mettle. Will he rise to the occasion and really follow God's way by doing what is just and right, even if it means challenging the divine decree? Or will he cave in? Abraham's role is not just to listen and rubber stamp God's decision. He must speak up and verify that what God plans to do really is just and right. And that is why Abraham then demands of God, quote, will you sweep away the righteous with the wicked, treating the righteous and the wicked alike? Far be it from you. Shall not judge of all the earth do right? That's pretty strong language to speak to God. But in the Midrash, the rabbis reinterpret Abraham's challenging question and turn it into a demand, saying, the judge of all the earth shall do right. So our task as descendants of Abraham, as descendants of Adam and Eve, is to do what is just and right. And that, for me, is the greatest principle in the Torah. This is how we serve God, by doing our best to do what is just and right, and not to be afraid to demand this, certainly not from any human authority, and even from God when necessary. At the same time, the Torah declares, be holy, for I, Adonai, your God, am holy. So, on the one hand, when necessary, we can challenge God, as it were, and at other times, we must seek to emulate God. The rabbis then asked, how do we do this? How do we emulate God? And they provided examples from the Torah. God clothed the naked when God clothed Adam and Eve. God visited the infirm when God visited Abraham after his circumcision. God comforted the mourner when God consoled Isaac over Abraham's death. And God buried the dead when God buried Moses. So to act in a holy manner is to perform basic acts of loving kindness towards other human beings. In Jewish tradition, these are called gmilut chasadim, a term deriving from the Hebrew word chesed, or loving kindness. So important are these deeds of loving kindness that in an early sage, Shimon the Just declared that deeds of loving kindness were one of three things that sustained the world. And another rabbi stated that one who studied Torah but performed no acts of loving kindness was as if he had no God. Centuries later, the medieval rabbi and philosopher Moshe ben Maimon, otherwise known as Maimonides, wrote that after acquiring correct knowledge, a person will then be determined always to live by expressing loving kindness, judgment, and righteousness, and thus to imitate the ways of God. So there we have it. We love God best by demonstrating how well we treat our fellow human beings, and by extension, how well we treat all of God's creatures, and indeed, all of God's creation. I'd like now to share with you, as I've been asked, a prayer from Jewish tradition. This is a prayer that's traditionally said silently, and I will read it for you. O God, keep my tongue from evil and my lips from deceit. Help me to be silent in the face of derision, humble in the presence of all. Open my heart to your Torah, and I will hasten to do your commandments. Save me with your power. In time of trouble, be my answer, that those who love you may rejoice. May the words of my mouth and the meditations of my heart be acceptable to you, Adonai, my rock and my redeemer. May the one who causes peace to reign in the high heavens, let peace descend on us, on all Israel, and all the world. Amen. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Brother Rabbi Anson. Let's again be silent for a few moments, allow these insights to percolate and resonate deep within us. And I will do a non-Abrahamic, in this case a Buddhist chant. Om Mane Padme Hum. Om Mane Padme Hum. Om pad me hum. Om mane pad me hum. Om mane pad me hum. So now, my dear friends, I was supposed to introduce Sister Nejud from Kuwait. She has been traveling, and just a couple of days ago, she said the places where she's traveling, she's finding out the internet connection is really very, very poor, and that she doesn't think she can come back in time to Kuwait to join our program. So we said, don't worry, because we have this wonderful person who will stand in her stead, and that is, we asked our associate minister, Reverend Sally Jo Gilbert de Vargas, to speak. And what can I say about her? You know, there's a verse in the Quran that says, what takes you to heaven is not your gender, it's not your religion, but having faith in God. But mostly, I say mostly because it's repeated so many times in the Quran, doing righteous deeds. And many of you who know Sally Jo, without really flattering her, she really is a servant of service. Like Rumi says, a lamp, a lifeboat, and a ladder. And the last thing I want to say about Sally Jo is that she takes so much joy in being of service. So I love to quote again that verse from Tagore, who says, you know, I slept and dreamt that life was joy. I awoke and found life was service. I served, and lo, service was joy. So let's introduce and welcome this embodiment of service, Sally Jo Gilbert de Vargas.
Thank you, Jamal. You know, I'm feeling a little speechless, having been asked to follow these wonderful presentations from Brother John and Sister Silvana, and that incredible rendition of the poem, and then Betsy's incredibly beautiful dance and song, and then Rabbi Anson. I mean, I've just been sitting here in tears, you guys, so please excuse me if my voice is a little faltering, because these presentations have been very, very deep, and I feel like there's nothing I can possibly say to add to them. And then Nejud couldn't come, and she sent a beautiful poem, prayer and poem, which we hope to be able to read later. And I hope that we can invite her back in the future when she's back in Kuwait, and you can be graced with her incredible presence as well. But I do want to start with a question, like Rabbi is, so used to doing with his sermons or talks. The question, of course, comes from our topic, the love of God, love of the good, and love of the neighbor. And I'm going to offer a bit of an interfaith perspective on these questions. But the first question that comes to mind is, after all, what is good? And as a teacher, when I'm talking about word definitions with students, when I talk about the definition of a word, I also talk about what it is not, what is good and what is not good. And again, so much has already been said. Rabbi, basically also addressed this question. But when I didn't have ability to hear what anybody else was going to say, but that's beautiful, because now I get to really see if I can fit into the powerful talks that have been made. But when I asked myself this question, how have I learned what is good? After all, how have I determined that? And one way the first thing that came to my mind was my mother. It was really my mother who taught me what was good and how to do good, especially. And I think for many of us, our mothers teach us, especially in our earliest life, how do we be good, and what does it mean to be good, and what does it mean not to be good? And they teach us not only by their words, but from their example. And from early childhood, that has been taught to me. I want to put a little aside here. Fathers teach us a lot too, and my father taught me much. And I think in my mind, fathers tend to teach us how to be strong, how to be smart, and how to wield power. and as a father who had 4 daughters, he taught his daughters well about that, I think, hopefully, how to wield positive power. But my mother taught me that doing good deeds is the basis of goodness. And as I grew up, and as most of us grow up, we also learn from the examples of others, just as our presenters already, and as Rabbi also explained, we observe and we study not only our family members, but our teachers, our elders, our saints. As Reverend Karen was saying when we were honoring our ancestors, all of the prophets and the teachers in our lives and our heroes and heroines. This is a lifelong endeavor to learn how to be a good person. Now, it's not surprising then that during Jesus's life, we are told that he was asked by one of his disciples, what is the greatest commandment? And again, we heard from Rabbi Anson about various answers to that. And when rabbis have been asked this in the past, and Jesus was a rabbi, so he was asked the same question. And his answer was, I believe, at least it says in the Gospel of Mark, his answer was, "Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your strength. The second is this, you shall love your neighbor as yourself. There is no other commandment greater than these." I think it's part of the origin of the Interfaith Harmony Week that we are able to find so many interconnections between the faith traditions, the Jewish tradition, the Christian tradition, and I'm also going to bring in the Islamic tradition in just a moment. But these 2 commandments, loving God and loving your neighbor. And there's a further explanation in the Christian gospel when the writer Matthew relates the parable of the day of judgment, when apparently God will divide all humankind into 2 groups. And this is after everyone has died and they're waiting to hear the judgment of their lives. And God says to one group, "For I was hungry and you gave me something to eat. I was naked and you clothed me. I was sick and you visited me. I was in prison and you came to me." Then the righteous will answer him, "Lord, when did we see you hungry or feed you, or thirsty and give you something to drink? And when did we see you a stranger and invite you in, or naked and clothe you? When did we see you sick or in prison and come to you? After all, you are God." And God will answer them and say to them, "Truly, I say to you, to the extent that you did this for one of my children, even the least of them, you did it for me." Now, again, this is a very powerful example from the Christian, and I heard Rabbi Anson relate to something very similar in the Jewish scripture about what God considers doing good and to whom we can do good. Now, the Islamic scripture, Holy Scripture, also gives an equally clear description of what is good and what is righteous. In Surah 2, chapter 2 of the Holy Quran, it says, "True righteousness does not consist in turning your face towards the east or the west, but truly righteous is he or she who believes in God and the resurrection day and the angels and the revelation and the prophets. And he spends his sustenance, however much he himself may cherish it, upon his near of kin and the orphans and the needy and the wayfarer and the beggars, and for the freeing of human beings from bondage, and who is constant in prayer and renders the purifying dues. And truly righteous are those who keep their promises whenever they promise, and are patient in misfortune and hardship and in times of peril. For it is they who have proved themselves true, and it is they who are conscious of God." Pretty clearly stated, our family members, the orphans, the needy, the wayfarer, which today we would call the immigrants, the beggars, and especially the human beings, freeing a human being from bondage. Now, Muslims believe that all of creation, including the human being, was created as inherently good, or fitra. The Arabic word is fitra. And We were created with free will, something God willingly gave to us or offered to us, and we perhaps foolishly accepted according to the Quran. Now, Muslims believe also that God's generosity and love and mercy and kindness flows to us at all times, and we have the capacity to accept it and even pass it along to others. But we also have the capacity to block the flow. Now, what would that mean? Well, in Surah 91, chapter 91 of the Quran, it says, consider the human soul and how it is formed in accordance with what was meant to be, and how it is imbued with human failings, as well as with consciousness of God. To a happy state shall indeed attain he or she who causes this self to grow in purity, and truly lost is he or she who buries it in darkness. So again, we have the capacity to grow our consciousness and become more of a human being, what Jamal always calls a more developed human being, by increasing our compassion and our love and our consciousness of God. But we can also bury it in darkness, and that is a problem in our world sometimes. Now, the second key question, of course, is who is our neighbor? And I love Rabbi Anson Laytner, how you explained how we are all the descendants of Adam and Eve, and how therefore our neighbors are our earthly siblings. That's beautiful, beautiful. And I think that would include everyone on earth. Now, Jesus was asked, being a rabbi and the one everybody comes to with questions, he was also asked by one of his disciples, a lawyer by trade. In the Gospel of Luke, it is recorded that he was also asked, who is my neighbor? You know, because neighbor, I don't know what the word would have been used in the Aramaic, but in English, it sort of implies it's somebody who lives next door to us, right, or nearby. Well, Jesus responds with the parable of the Good Samaritan, where the man, you know this parable, but let's listen to it again or think about it again, because the thing about a parable is the more we contemplate it, the deeper we can go with it. In this parable, a man who is presumably from the Jewish tradition, the Jewish tribe, he's attacked and robbed and left for dead on the side of the road. During the day, a priest walks by, doesn't pay any attention to the man, just figures, oh, well, he's dead, he's gone. He walks by, doesn't pay any attention. Then a Levite, a person from would be considered a priest from the tribe of Levi, he passes by. This is a man who's honorable in this tradition, but he doesn't have time for this, and he walks by the man on the side of the road. Then comes a Samaritan, who we have to understand is a culture that at the time would have been among the marginalized, certainly not a high caste person or an honored person. He comes by and immediately goes over to the man, sees he's in distress, sees he's alive, ministers to him, picks him up and carries him to the nearest town, takes him to an inn, and gives him food and drink, and leaves money with the innkeeper to continue his care. Now, Jesus goes through this whole parable, and then he turns to the lawyer who asked him the question and says, now tell me, which of these three, the priest, the Levite, or the Samaritan, acted as a neighbor to the robbed man? The lawyer answers correctly, luckily, the one who showed him mercy. Jesus then concludes, go and do likewise. So again, Jesus is very clear about neighbor and what it means to be a neighbor, as well as what it means to have a neighbor. Now, in the Holy Quran, we have an entire chapter entitled Neighborly Needs. Now, I warn you, it's a short chapter, it's just 3 short sentences, but I want to read it to you. It says, do you see the one who denies the day of reckoning? Such is one who shuns the orphan and doesn't encourage the feeding of the poor. So woe to the worshipers who do not pray with their hearts, but only wish to be seen, those who turn away from neighborly needs. So yes, in both the Christian and the Islamic traditions, there is a day of reckoning. And in each tradition, it is said that we will be held accountable for our deeds in this world, whether good or not so good. Remember, however, God has made it very clear, my mercy prevails over my wrath. And all the wisdom traditions teach us, just like St. Francis taught us in his beautiful prayer, that we need to start thinking of everyone on earth as our neighbor, including the plants, the animals, the elements such as the water, the sun, the moon, the stars, the minerals. For God has freely given all of this to us, placed them in our care, made us stewards, not masters. God has entrusted us to take care of all that is in the heavens and the earth, just as we care for ourselves. May we all take this sacred trust seriously and do our part to create one harmonious earthly family, just as our mothers would have us do. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sally Jo. That was so profound and deep. And I noticed that even the animal community agreed. Your birds were chirping in total agreement. Okay, a few moments of silence. And I will chant the Hindu chant of Jai Jai Ma, which is in accordance with our theme of the month, honoring the Divine Mother, the Divine Feminine. For the whole year, actually. Jai Jai Ma, 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 Jai Jai Ma.
To meet you sometime.
So, my dear friends, I'm looking at the time, and I'm supposed to be speaking now, but I'm having this voice within me. You know, I talk to myself quite often. I call myself Brother Jamal. And I'm hearing this voice saying, Brother Jamal, if you speak, keep it short, because so many insights have been shared. And if there's a plethora of beautiful spiritual insights, the great masters say it can cause spiritual indigestion. So I wrote on my notes here, I really wrote it down, Brother Jamal, keep it short. Okay, so I'll keep it very short. You know, what does it mean to love God? For me as a Muslim, it means to practice Islam. And what is Islam? Literally, it means to surrender to God in peace. But the question is, as the Quran is asking, what are you surrendering? And the Quran says what you're surrendering is your attachment to your ego. And this is called by the Islamic mystics the divine exchange. If I really love God, Brother Jamal, bring divinity, bring spirit into the center of your life, not your ego. And I love the encouragement by Rumi. I love to quote Rumi, who says, you know, following this verse on the Quran that says, Allah is the best of providers. Rumi says, where will you find a customer like God? Brother Jamal, where will you find a customer like God who pays in gold? Who accepts your counterfeit coins? Who buys your dirty, shabby bag of goods and in return gives a spiritual spring so delicious that even sugar is jealous of its sweetness. So that's one meaning. Another meaning of loving God is, Prophet Muhammad said, if you love God, love God's creation. The Quran says, be conscious of God. And there's one verse that comes very strongly, says, worship God. Another verse in the Quran says, bow in adoration and come closer to God. Now, do you know how Muslims pray? They bow and they prostrate. And where do they point their prayer rug? In what direction? They point it in the direction of the Kaaba, the symbolic house of God in the Grand Mosque of Mecca. It's a building that has a black covering, and all the Muslims point in that direction and bow and prostrate. And the great mystics say, what happens? 24 hours a day, Muslims are bowing and prostrating in the direction of the Kaaba. But what happens if you take the Kaaba away? Take the Kaaba away. What do you find? People are bowing and prostrating to one another. Prayer is really about service. That's why the Quran says, it has a lot of guidelines for, if you want to give. The Quran says, if you want to give, Jamal, if you want to give, the guideline is give freely of what you love. Give to those, the Quran says, who ask and who cannot ask. It goes on, it says, Jamal, give quietly if you can. This will atone for some of your wrongdoings. And the fourth one is, give for the sake of God, meaning don't be attached to the fruits of the service, of the prestige, the power, the title. And there's another verse in the Quran that says, if you want to be of service, can you be of authentic service? Make some structural changes. Free a slave from bondage. Here's a saying of the Prophet Muhammad who says, if you witness injustice, use your hands. Meaning get engaged, do something, Jamal. If you cannot do that, use your mouth, speak out against this injustice. If you cannot do that, okay, pray from your heart. But the Prophet Muhammad said in this instance, this is the weakest form of faith. So what the Quran is saying, if you really love God and you want to be of service, to love God, you must have also courage. Lastly, to love your neighbor. It's easy for me to say beautiful things about loving my neighbor, but what if I am homophobic, anti-immigrant, Islamophobic, anti-Semitic, all those anti, and my neighbor is a gay or lesbian, an immigrant, a Muslim, or a Jew? Well, the key is I've got to become, as has been said, a more complete, a more developed human being. I've got to do the inner inconvenient work of becoming more Christ-like, Buddha-like, Elohim-like, Allah-like. The Quran suggests you've got to transform your ego from a commanding master into a personal assistant. You've got to purify your heart. It's not easy. Like the sages say, Jamal, if you're purifying your heart, polishing your heart, that's easy to say. But if you get irritated by every rub, how will the mirror of your heart ever be polished? This work is not easy. I love the words of Rumi, who says, the lion who breaks the enemy's ranks, the lion who breaks the enemy's ranks is a minor hero. Is a minor hero compared to the lion who overcomes himself or herself. Okay, I said I would keep it short, so let me just end with just two statements that really resonate for me. I talk to myself, Brother Jamal, if your relationship with your religion or your holy book, if your relationship with your religion or your holy book comes in the way of your relationship with the other, it will certainly come in the way of my relationship with God. The other one which I remind myself is, the problems of this world are so huge, the social injustice issues, planetary degradation, they're so phenomenal, so enormous, that no one religion, no one culture, no one race can take care of it. We have no choice. We have no choice but to join hands, to collaborate and cooperate in overcoming these. Okay, my friends, enough said. Just be very still. And in that stillness, let me ask either Brother John or Reverend Karen, are we having that liturgical dance video?
Yes.
Okay, let's have it because time is passing.
Thank you, Brother Jamal.
Thank you.
Our next offering is an expression of liturgical movement in song and dance, choreographed and produced by our friend Betsy Beckman, entitled Revolution of the Heart, whose lyrics come directly from the writings of Dorothy Day. Dorothy was a spiritual activist who founded the Catholic worker movement in the 1930s, a pacifist movement that combines direct aid for the poor with nonviolent direct action on their behalf. The dancers in this video feature some of the members of the current Catholic worker community in Tacoma and honor the elderly Father Bill Bixel. Father Bix, as he was known, co-founded the Tacoma Catholic Worker with some of his dear friends. He was an advocate for justice for all people, especially those on the streets of Tacoma and those suffering with extreme mental illness. Most remember Father Bix as a renowned peace activist who was arrested several times, raising his voice against the military-industrial complex and nuclear weapons. He passed away 2 weeks after this filming. May we all be inspired to do our part in caring for one another, in caring for our neighbor.
We must bring about a revolution of the heart. We must feed not just the body, but the soul. For the gospel takes away our right to stand apart. We must stand with all the poor and be made whole. One brick at a time, a pebble in a pond, causes ripples spreading everywhere from you. Each step that we take and each one of our deeds gives us hope for all the work that we must do. We must bring about a revolution of the heart. We must feed not just the body but the soul. For the gospel takes away our right to stand apart. We must stand with all the poor and be made whole. To love everyone, our enemy and friend, in an ever-widening circle round the earth. To help everyone, to feed and clothe themselves, for the poor and destitute all have their worth. We must bring about a revolution of the heart. We must feed not just the body but the soul. For the gospel takes away our right to stand apart. We must stand with all the poor and be made whole. And so we must fight and cry out for the rights and the dignity of workers we employ. For true love is full of beauty and of grace, understanding and perception full of joy. We must bring about a revolution of the heart. We must feed not just the body but the soul. For the gospel takes away our right to stand apart. We must stand with all the poor and be made whole. We must stand with all the poor and be made whole.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Brother John and Sister Silvana, for that offering. That was enlivening and so meaningful. So let's just have just a few moments of silence as we come to a close gently. The next part, as you're in silence, is sharing our hearts. Anything you want to share, of course, as I always jokingly say, make it shorter than my sermon or anybody else's sermon. Anything you want to say, please feel free. Just unmute and express yourself. Anything from the heart.
I just want to express my gratitude.
Thank you. Thank you, Sister Norma.
Good morning, this is Lee. And I wanted to say how pleased I am to hear everybody talk today, because it makes me want to be the best person I could possibly be. So I'm very grateful to all of you for sharing from your heart and soul and love. Thank you all.
Thank you, Brother Lee. And I'll tell you very honestly and sincerely, I would like to be like you when I grow up. And I mean that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Otherwise, it's begin as we come to a close. Music by Monica and Jeffrey.
Hi. We're going to close with This Is My Song. It's a pretty well-known hymn that it's done at interfaith gatherings. It's to the tune of Finlandia by Sibelius. So if people would like to join along, Jeffrey's putting the words into the text box, a chat box. There it goes. Hopefully we got the same words. There's a lot of versions of this. This is my song, O God of all the nations, a song of peace for land afar and nigh. This is my home, the country where my heart is. These are my hopes, my dreams, my holy shrine. But other hearts in other lands are beating with hopes and dreams as true and high as mine. My country's skies are bluer than the ocean, and sunlight beams on clover leaf and pine. But other lands have sunlight too and clover,
Thank you so much for your gracious offering and for your always evergreen willingness to provide service to Interfaith Community Sanctuary. We are so grateful to you, Monica and Jeffrey. Sergio, are you going next with
Didn't put any reactions on.
the sharing our wealth?
Yes, I can do that. Thank you.
Okay.
I'd
Joe
like
again.
to mention that we are a volunteer community, and we are keeping up with the upkeep of our sacred building, even though it has been closed for a while to our gatherings, but we'll be opening up soon. And we are, still paying our bills. So if anyone would like to make a contribution, we are most welcoming those and very grateful for any contributions that people make. The best way, or the easiest way probably, to contribute would be to go to our website, which is interfaithcommunitysanctuary.org, and I'll put that in the chat in just a minute. It's hard for me to type and talk at the same time. I might make a mistake. Interfaithcommunitysanctuary.org. There's a donate button on the left-hand side. And also, some of you prefer to mail your donation in by check, and I'll put our mailing address if you'd like to do it that way. Many of you do give regularly, and we really deeply appreciate that, because we are able to keep up with our sacred trust of keeping our building in good shape and keeping these services going on Zoom, which is such a wonderful, wonderful privilege for all of us. So thank you. And thank you to all of the people who participated today and donated their time and their energy. And I think, Karen, maybe you want to talk a little bit about the upcoming gatherings.
I just want to mention the first thing about the upcoming gathering is this program of World Interfaith Harmony Month continues. And the last program in that month is Reverend Karen's service, which is Encountering the Infinite, Meeting the Divine Mother in Nature. Am I right, Reverend Karen? You want to add to that?
Nothing to add. However, all that I am and hope to be, I owe to my mother. And we're going to talk about that a bit. Also, talk about all of nature and how nurturing it is for our human being and for the world. So thank you so much.
So please join us for that next Sunday. Was there anything else in the upcoming gatherings? It's all on the website, of course.
Well, we have ongoing classes. Please have a look at the website about that. But we would love to have you join us on Zoom as you can. And when we get back together in person, let's be together again. Thank you.
And also, Sister Najud from Kuwait, she couldn't join us, but she sent a poem. And if you have the patience to wait, I'll request Reverend Karen just to read that poem that Najud wrote. She's a pretty well-known poetess and writer in her own country of Kuwait. Would you mind reading that, Karen?
I'm happy to. Also, I'm very delighted that there's so much artistic expression as well as spiritual wisdom being shared in our service today. This is called O by Najud al-Gaut. Beyond the courtyards of oneness, they chant, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. And the lover asks, have you fed the churchgoer and held the one who walks the lime green reeds toward the ashram? Oh. And as you wipe the sweat off the forehead of another, remember Al-Wadud. Remember him alone in the realm of stained glass and choir, when the azan blesses your ears and waltzes in your heart. And connect with him alone in guruduwaras and temples and churches and synagogues and mosques and markets, and in the savannah where lions and gazelles dance. Remember Al-Wadud, for he comes to those who beseech him from the monastery of the heart. Remember him alone in the Vedas and the Psalms, the Gospels, the Ayahs, and the Sutras, love letters. Among many letters of love, among infinite letters of love. Oh, remember him alone when you love the other and know no other in the garden, where gurus, rabbis, pastors, priests, nuns, monks, imams need bread and wash each other's feet. Here is a garden promised for lovers. Remember him.
Wow, let's just drink that in. I am blessed by your presence, O Lord. I am filled with your blessings, Allah. La ilaha illallah. La ilaha illallah. La ilaha illallah. Ya Allah. One more time. I am blessed by your presence, O Lord. Take a deep breath. I am filled with your blessings, Allah. La ilaha illallah. La ilaha illallah. La ilaha illallah. Ya Allah. So, my dear friends, when I ring the bell again, we can become officially unconvened. But since we can't, not meeting in person, those who want to stay, we're on for a few more minutes, or at least 15 minutes. If you want to talk and connect, please feel free. But as I ring this bell, we are unconvened. But before that, truly from our hearts and on behalf of Interfaith Community Sanctuary, Northwest Interfaith, we really thank you for these beautiful rectangles of love and for your presence. Okay, here goes, my friends. Hold on to your ears.